Coach, first of all, thank you so much for joining us. I wanted to start with a family question because I know you spoke in your press conference about how excited you were that your kids were going to get to experience the atmosphere at BYU. You talked about the importance that your wife played and you deciding to take this job. But there's one question that everybody in the recruiting industry really wants to know, and that's what is it like to be your big brother's boss?
Oh man, years of payback for sure, man. All those years he picked on me, but nah, man, it's been really fun, honestly. It's been really unique. We've obviously both been involved in the game for a long time, albeit different kind of ends of the spectrum. And so now all these years later for our worlds to kind of come together and collide, that's been really fun and being able to tell him what to do surely doesn't hurt as well.
You were introduced as BYU's head coach on April 17th. You were still in the midst of a playoff run with the Suns at the time. It was 2 months later to the day on June 17th that Yegor Demon was announced to have signed with you guys. A day later, it was Kanan Catchings, and that brought BYU recruiting to unprecedented levels. Obviously, those levels have only continued to go to new heights this year. Staten became the highest ranked domestic prospect to ever commit to BYU, and then obviously AJ DeBonsa, the number one prospect in the country, was just huge news for you guys. How have you rewrote what's possible from a recruiting standpoint in less than a year?
I think it just started with the mentality of why can't we do that? I think that was my big mindset as I decided to make this move. I've loosely followed the program, here for years, just my affiliation with the church, and so I've always kind of, been a fan, a casual fan, and been a very storied program. Have had a lot of success, but my goal was to try to, move the needle, push it to new heights. That's just kind of how my mind operates. That's kind of how I personally was able to carve out a path to make my way to the NBA and climb that ladder. And so that's what I set out to do here. And in short order, when I realized the amount of support that this place had, the passion of the fans, the passion of the administration, they want this place to be great. And that was something that I had a lot of confidence in terms of taking a job in the first place, knowing that, we could shoot for the moon, given how good people want this place to be and the resources behind it.
You mentioned sport and resources, and a lot of people talk about NIL, but NIL doesn't happen without a head coach who can galvanize support, who can convince uh, supporters and people to build partnerships that there's a real chance to develop winning at an unprecedented level. So, how have you been able to sell yourself and your vision and build those partnerships so quickly?
I mean, one thing I did right out of the gate when I first got here was, I asked if we could get a meeting with, the people that were most closely tied to the program within the community, and I really just wanted to get those people in a room so I could explain to them how, what my vision for the program was in terms of really the infrastructure and all the stuff that I learned in the NBA as it relates to how to run a successful organization, from systems to hiring to staff layout to, um, just programs and how we were going to go about doing that and just show them the model that we wanted to put in play and let them know that, they were going to be a big part of that with their support. And so I just want to give people an inside look on what we want to do and not just have them guessing on, what exactly the plan of attack was going to be. And that was a really good kind of jumping off point.
I wanted to ask you about what has been explained to me as Provo, capital P, capital R, capital O, VO. Because beyond resources, you have to be able to convince these families that you can prepare them for the next level. Obviously, your background gives you a unique opportunity to do that. But can you speak to what I believe are the four pillars of that program?
Yeah, so I mean, when you talk about, resources, it's not just NIL, it's resources to hire the right people. We have a bunch of people that have NBA experience. Obviously, I get a lot of the headlines there, but our head strength and conditioning coach was in the NBA for a long time, worked with Giannis for many years with the Bucks. Our head of mental performance, longtime NBA guy who's worked for a number of teams, notably the Bucks as well. he always rubs that in because they beat us in the finals when I was with the Suns. But that's a story for another day. And then I've got, two former G League head coaches on my staff. I've got a couple other guys that worked in the G League. My analytics guy was with me with the Phoenix Suns. I hired an NBA level nutritionist who has a boatload of experience in the NBA as well. And so when you talk about resources, it's not just NIL, it's BYU and the administration along with my kind of vision, those things coming together. That's the story we can tell the recruits and their parents when they come. You know, what does it mean to have resources? Well, let me show you. And kind of, hey, look, this is what it's like at the NBA. We're doing the exact same thing here as far as your player development plan and all the things that go into, what we've laid out. And then you talk about the style of play as well. We very much a space and pace type of style of play. We try to get up and down the floor. We spread the floor out so guys have driving lanes and play a ton of pick and roll, which is very NBA like. And so, all those things combined kind of make up the Provo kind of moniker, if you will. And that's the story that we try to tell. And lastly, I mean, we get guys and families out here, and Utah is a place that a lot of people haven't been to. And then you come out here, you realize you see the resources. I'm sorry, you see the facilities, you see the beauty. The tech industry is booming out here. So there's just a lot of things that are going on in Utah that I think a lot of people don't really know until they actually get out here and see it for themselves.
Let me ask you more about the style of play, if I could, because you talk about space and space and pace and adopting that NBA style of play. But I have to imagine it's a lot easier to implement those things at an NBA level. Whereas in college, a lot of these players haven't been even introduced to these concepts yet. How much of a challenge has that been to teach these concepts to college age players?
I mean, I've had a ton of learning experiences since I've been here, things that worked in the NBA, both tactically as well as, systematically in terms of how you teach and so forth. So there's been a lot of things that I've had to tweak, but at the end of the day, I think the essence of what we're trying to do remains the same, both what I was doing in the NBA and here. And then it's how do you adopt it to your personnel? And so that's been a big learning curve for me. How do you adopt it to within your personnel, within the rules of the game here in college? It's a lot more physical. They let a lot of things go, and so early on that was frustrating me. I was crying about it too much instead of embracing it and figuring out ways we could put our players in positions to, play the style that we wanted to play within the confines that we had, whether that's skill sets, whether that's officiating, whatever the case may be. Style of defenses are a lot different as well. And so, I think I've had to just streamline things as it relates to like teaching guys, how we want to play. But, we got a mature locker room. We got guys at work. And so it really hasn't been a bumpy road as it relates to trying to get them to play the way we'd like to play.
That's very interesting stuff. With regard to the style of play, earlier this week, you had that big win against Kansas. You guys had 15 first half field goals. You assisted on all 15 of those buckets. Why is ball movement so important to your style of play?
Well, I think when you combine it with the spacing that we try to play in and the shooting that we have out there, I mean, teams have to make a decision ultimately against us if they're going to try to get us off the 3-point line or protect the rim. And so it's hard to do both when you got guys who can really shoot the basketball. And along with that ball movement, it's just quick decision making. That's something that we preach a lot, preach it every day. And so when you put all those things on the table, and you are able to move the ball, it becomes infectious. Guys want to make the right play for their teammate. It's easy to hold people accountable when everybody's playing that way. And our guys, to their credit, have really bought into it. And we got guys that fit, what we're trying to do. And we've tweaked things along the way, and I think every good team does that. But that recipe of ball movements has been a good one for us.
Coach, you've worked extensively with a number of NBA All-Stars, most recently guys like Kevin Durant and Devin Booker, and those are prolific shot makers and prolific scorers. Devin Booker, though, has really grown as a passer. So I'm wondering if there's a corollary there when you talk about making quick decisions. How does a coach teach players to make quick decisions, whether it's in the NBA or in college basketball?
I think there's a lot of ways to do it. You got to show them on the film, first of all, like why it's important. I mean, a guy like Book is him making a quick decision versus Yegor Demon or Dallin Hall make a quick decision are done for different reasons. A guy like Book or Kev, with them, it's every time you get the ball, if you hold it, you're going to have three defenders staring at you. So if you go quick, they can't load up on you. With our guys here, it's, hey, these guys, the quicker you play, the less these guys can crawl up into you and be physical with you, and they can't catch the ball. And so it's done for different reasons, and we try to show the value of those reasons to our players. And anytime a player has success in things that you're trying to, ask them to do, that obviously is going to breed a lot of confidence in what's going on. And so I think our guys here have been smart enough to understand what we're trying to do, why we're trying to do it, and then we've been able to have some successful offensive outputs because of it, and then that I think breeds that confidence in that.
Let me preface this final kind of schematic question just with thanking you, to be quite honest. There's a lot of coaches that aren't willing to talk about, basketball philosophy and teaching points and stuff like that, candidly, especially those who come from the NBA. I know it's kind of, en vogue these days to not answer questions in the NBA, but you, even just watching your press conferences and stuff, you seem very open to explaining your philosophies and your tactics, and that's just a lot of fun for people who cover the game because we love the game. So I did want to mention that. I realize this isn't the norm, but given the mid-year when you're looking to make adjustments, whether it's defensive coverages, putting in a new play, is that more time consuming in college than it is in the NBA to make those mid-season adjustments?
I don't know if I would say it's more time consuming. I think it's more, and I learned this a long time ago when I was with the Sixers. Well, first of all, I appreciate the comment about trying to be candid. Look, I don't nothing we're doing is that tricky, man. So there's nothing really to hide. We're just trying to play good basketball. But I appreciate that comment. But in terms of what you asked just now, I mean, I think it's more tempting in college because you do have more time on your hands, and I think coaches by nature, more is not always more. I'm of the less is more mindset. I think you can do too much and then you don't get good at anything. And so I try to be really mindful about the things that we do add. Lately we've added a lot more to our defensive tool belt. Just being able to play different teams and learn different things that our guys can pick up. That's where we've actually been able to move the needle, especially recently. But I'm pretty careful about what we put in, what we call things. It all has to make sense. It's if I know it, but it confuses the players or clouds their minds, it's useless. And so I try to be really careful in that. But I think more than anything, it's a lot more tempting here than it is in the NBA because in the NBA, you have no time to practice. So there's never a good time to really put anything new in.
Interesting, very interesting. Coach, my last question. Listening to your media availability this week, I think you were talking about an athletic director and you commented about how you liked their leadership style. I know this isn't your first time as a head coach, but in your first year as the head coach at BYU, how would you define your own leadership style?
I try to empower my coaches, number one. I try to empower the players, number two. I don't think I know everything. I'm very curious, and I want to have a lot of open forums to discuss things with my staff. I think they've learned about what that takes in terms of the level of preparation they need to have to come in and present things to me. And then we've kind of go through a vetting process before we take things to the players. And then as it relates to the players, I think empowerment. I don't want to be all over these guys. I don't want to overcoach them. I think early in the year I was calling too many plays. I was trying to do too much. And I told the guys point blank, I said, hey, look, I want you guys to play more free. Here's what we're trying to do. Go figure out how we're going to get it done, more or less. Of course, there's structure behind all that, but I think empowerment is probably the best way for me to describe it, and that's how I grew a lot certainly as a coach. Like the head coaches that I was an assistant for, the ones that empowered me and gave me clear responsibilities. I feel like I grew a lot in those environments. Give credit to Brett Brown, Monty Williams, Frank Vogel. Particularly Brett Brown was the one who was really instrumental in my growth there. And so, I've been fortunate to work alongside a lot of high level guys who've won multiple championships at the highest level. And so, I was a sponge for many years, and now it's fun for me to be able to, put a lot of that stuff in play now as the leader of this program.
Coach, I know we are in the thick of the season, and I just really appreciate you making the time for us. Good luck this weekend.
Thank you, man. Appreciate you having me on and appreciate you letting me take jabs at Justin, more importantly.